All right, guys, finishing up at least this morning with my top 10s. This one, we're looking at my number 4 super middleweight in the world right now. That is the undefeated WBC super middleweight champion, David Benavidez. Super middleweight's 168. So Benavidez, we already know he's almost for sure going to be facing Romer Angulo in an optional defense in his next fight. The state of Arizona has already approved of the fight when the coronavirus pandemic is opened up and lifted. So Benavidez will face him. After that, Benavidez is going to be making a mandatory defense almost for sure against Avni Yildirim, his number 1 contender, who should be healthy by that point. I really think that's going to be what happens. That's going to be his 2020. So with that being said, believing that that's going to be his year laid out already, what does he do heading into 2021? Because we already know what's next, and we know it's next. So what is next, basically, for David Benavidez? What are possibilities next year? Because I wholeheartedly believe he's going to knock out Angulo, and then he's going to knock out Yildirim and roll into 2021 ready to face anybody. So let's take a look at the top 10 at what he could be doing early or the first half of 2021. We start with number 1, Callum Smith, the undefeated WBA super champion. I don't see the fight happening, even though I think both guys would be into fighting each other. But I think Callum Smith is really trying to get back in line for a Canelo fight or something else. Because realistically, a lot of these guys are only going to be able to fight once this year. That's just the real part of it. Most of them are only going to fight once. And, they're going to have to pick wisely. Now, with Billy Joe Saunders no longer fighting Canelo, most likely, that leaves him open as an option. And Callum Smith, with fighting for Matchroom, has really good options. He's got John Ryder, a rematch. He's got Billy Joe Saunders as a possibility. Daniel Jacobs. I mean, there are possibilities, but I really believe that Callum Smith and Benavidez fight is not going to happen or not possible for the first half of next year, at least, because he's probably going to be facing Billy Joe or Daniel Jacobs to try to stay in line for a Canelo fight later on down the road. And those are big fights right there. Those are big fights. So that's what I think's going to happen. So I don't see, at least for the first half of the year, I don't see these guys crossing the street and facing each other. Next, Canelo's number 1. Canelo's not going to fight David Benavidez. He's not a big enough name yet, and he fights for the PBC. He has so many other bigger name options that he could face, and Benavidez is dangerous, so I don't see it. Number 3, Danny Jacobs. Danny Jacobs with Matchroom. He's got better options to take there and to go after, bigger names. And, why risk crossing the street to face a guy with not as big of a name and who's a serious threat like Benavidez? I don't see it. Number 4 is actually Benavidez is number 4. So number 5, Billy Joe Saunders. He's in the same boat. Billy Joe wants to get back in line for Canelo, and he has great options with Matchroom. Again, there's Danny Jacobs, there's Callum Smith. If Billy Joe makes it out of the year without losing, he's going to roll into the first half of next year looking for a big fight against either Daniel Jacobs or Callum Smith, in my opinion, if he doesn't fight one of them in the second half of this year. So I just highly doubt that he's going to be considering David Benavidez at that point. So I don't see it. Number 6 is undefeated IBF champion Caleb Plant. Now, this fight, I think, is probably the most likely to happen in the first half of next year. These guys wanted to fight this year. Caleb Plant's still calling them out now. But, he's got mandatories due. He's going to David Benavidez is going to have a mandatory due against Yildirim. I think Yildirim should be healed up, to fight Benavidez by the end of the year. And then Benavidez will be clear. And Caleb Plant will probably make a second mandatory defense against, like, Caleb Truax just to get the mandatories out of the way. And then I think these two guys are very likely first half of next year to unify belts. They're both undefeated champions. They both don't like each other. They talk a lot of shit, and I think that's very likely. Number 7 is former 2-time champion, a rematch with Anthony Durrell. I guess it's possible for the first half of next year, but Dirrell's going to have to earn that shot. I think he's going to have to get back in line and beat somebody or at least win a final eliminator to earn that shot. But even if he does, if Benavidez beats Yildirim in his mandatory defense, he's not going to have to make another mandatory at least until the second half of next year. So I don't see him facing Dirrell in the first half. Number 8 is Caleb Truax. If Truax is still banging around, if he were to pull off an upset against Plant and become the IBF champ again and doesn't have to face Plant in a rematch, or he beats somebody else significant, I guess it's possible, but I really don't. I don't think Benavidez would want to take it unless Truax has a world title, if he could do something bigger. But if that bigger thing doesn't happen, it's always possible because he's with the PBC. And that same goes for Anthony Dirrell, if for some reason a Plant fight doesn't happen. Number 9 is Lionel Thompson. Now, Benavidez was considering Thompson, too, for the defense that he's making against Angulo. He was considering Thompson. I think Thompson's more of a full load than Angulo is, so that's why he stayed away from Thompson. But, if Thompson's got to get a significant win, but if Benavidez is just trying to fill time for a bigger fight in the second half of next year, I think he could face Thompson because he's a PBC guy, so it definitely is possible. And finally is John Ryder. I don't think Ryder's going to make it out of the year without losing because I think Ryder's going to face somebody big in Matchroom. He's going to face either Danny Jacobs or Callum Smith or Billy Joe Saunders next. And I think he's going to lose to any one of those three. And he's probably not going to be a top 10 guy after that. And he's not going to be coming off of a big win or a controversial loss. So, and he's with Matchroom. And it's just too, I don't think it's worth crossing the street for Benavidez to take a fight against John Ryder, unless Ryder's a world champion, and then again, he's still going to be with Matchroom, and he's going to be lined up for bigger names. So, that's it for the top 10 on what Benavidez could be doing in the first half of next year, but the truth is we really don't know. I personally feel he's going to destroy both Angulo and then Yildirim, and then he's going to roll into the second half of next year, or the first half of next year, looking to make that unification bout with Caleb Plant, and I think it's going to get made. Unless Plant makes an optional defense in his next fight before the end of the year and then has to make another mandatory in the first half of the year, then that's the only thing I can think would take away from them. But I think Plant should play it smart and go after and make another mandatory, face his highest rated contender in his next bout, which is Caleb Truax. He's with the PBC. Face him, and then that he gets that out of the way, and then boom, he can make the optional defense in a unification bout against Benavidez, and all the stars align the right way. But if that doesn't happen, then I think a rematch with Anthony Dirrell is possible, or a showdown with Lionel Thompson for Benavidez. And once he becomes unified champ, then we can start talking about crossing the street. And I think that's the first half of next year. He can unify titles and then start talking about Canelo, Callum Smith, and all those guys, and about crossing the street and making a bigger fight. So, but I love David Benavidez. I love the guy. He's a great combination of boxer and puncher. He's fast. He fucking hits hard. And he's young. And he's motivated. And he's hungry. So I like him a lot. Definitely check out him fighting this year. He's probably going to get 2 fights in before the end of the year. And hopefully by the first half of next year, he's unifying belts. All right, guys, that's what's next on David Benavidez, my number 4 super middleweight in the world. Hope you enjoyed it. True Boxing, you've been hit with the truth.